Today we're doing our unicorn split, which is a lovely split because it's actually a fake split. And even though you're not in a full split, vertical split on the pole, it still looks really beautiful when you're spinning. It's a lovely line. So that's what we're learning today. And you can either invert up into the split or you can drop down into it. So we'll go over both those entries now as well, because of course the result is going to be the same. So with your unicorn split, either way, whether you're inverting or dropping down into it, you're going to have quite a high knee hook. And then from this knee hook, the same arm is going to go into an elbow grip. So you don't really have to go too close, like right under the knee. You want to give yourself a little bit of room to slide. This bottom hand, it's really important that we put it into a split grip with the index finger pointing down the pole. Now this is because it's going to protect your wrist rather than doing this. We want to do this so that we can slide down, because you will absolutely need to slide your hand down the pole as you kind of extend your legs out into the unicorn split. The split actually does move down the pole a little bit. And depending on your flexibility, you'll be able to slide down further. So protect your wrist, go into your split grip, and of course you are giving it a nice little push out of that bottom hand as well in order to push your hips back away from the pole. So while we're discussing that, in terms of just how to get into this move, the more flexibility you have in your kind of groin and inner thighs, the closer you'll be able to leave your hips to the pole. So you'll have to slide, but you won't have to push back as much. If you aren't as flexible there, it doesn't matter, because you're still going to make a beautiful pose, but you will need to push your hips back away from the pole so that the split is like this as opposed to being like this, if that makes sense. So the more you need to push back from the pole, that's going to be determined by how much range, how much mobility and flexibility you have, particularly in your groin and hips, right? So push, and of course, pulling in here. So when you thread that elbow and you're squeezing here, so you're pulling your wrist in, of course, towards your chest and shoulders. And remember, as always, whenever we do elbow grip, make sure that you squeeze and engage your bicep to hold you nice and solid on the pole. So let's do that much. We'll start with an invert to get up into it. So from an invert, just make a forearm press with your bottom hand. This is a really nice way with this forearm to bring the leg in front of the pole. Make sure this foot is in front of the pole. Now I'm going to thread this top hand through to the elbow and squeeze. Bottom hand's going to go into a split grip when I spin back around. Here, split grip, and I'm pushing away a little bit and sliding my finger down the pole. Now, as I push, I'm going to start to drop my hips, keep squeezing this arm, really strong elbow grip. I'm dropping the hips to extend that leg, and the more flexible you are will determine how much you need to push away from the pole. And you want to try to drop down so that your foot is kind of catching in the back of the heel there. So both feet are in front of the pole, and that's important for your grip point as well. So it should feel quite strong on your elbow there. Your elbow is kind of holding you in place while you're positioning yourself on the pole. That's how we get into the move. Now in terms of holding the move, so we're here, we've pulled in. When you're squeezing, you really do want to think about lifting your chest, and more importantly, you want to pull your chest in towards the pole. So not only is this going to help bring your hand up to your ankle, which is where we want to be for our full unicorn split, but if that's a bit much of a stretch for you, you can just take your hand out, or of course you can leave it on as well until you feel confident taking that arm off the pole. But the more you lift and pull in, Yep, obviously the more aligned you'll be, the more beautiful the pose will be, but also it's going to be much easier to reach up and grab your foot from here as it is from here. So you're not just engaging your bicep, but you're pulling your chest in towards the pole. When we do this and we pull in, you can twist your chest a little bit inward, again to help you reach your foot. And then once you've got hold of your ankle, we want to try to open out a little bit. So pulling this elbow back and behind as much as you can, so engaging between your shoulder blades and starting to really squeeze them together to open up. And you are using your ankle like a cup grip, so your thumb is down, as you wrap in here. So I'll just show you here. So your thumb will be down. You want to grab the outside of your ankle, so it's going to be extended there, and you want to grab the outside of your ankle and pull on it to increase your lift through the chest, to increase your pull in with the chest, and also to increase your twist out slightly. So, and we do want to do it in that order as well. So lift and pull in, grab, keep pulling in, and then start to open. So pull that elbow back. And the whole time you're doing that, this elbow is working really, really hard. So make sure that you keep that bicep engaged and squeezing in, and you're not just starting to hang in your shoulder and pulling on your skin too much. So if you're not used to elbow grips, it's going to be quite strong, and it should feel like it's pushing into your elbow pit. But if it's starting to pull and drag on your skin, then that's because you've stopped engaging and you're starting to use your skin more instead of squeezing and engaging into that grip point. So I hope that makes sense. That really does apply to so much of what we do in pole. The grip point is important, and yes, of course, our skin is kind of keeping us there on the pole, but really it's about engaging the muscles at the point of contact to hold you there rather than relying on your skin. So keep that squeezing in the whole time. So let's try that with the reach if we can, reaching around to the ankle and then using it thumb down to pull and open and get into our full unicorn split. So we'll go again from the invert, and then we'll do it again, adding some finesse, and we'll drop down this time. All right, so we've hooked, bottom hand goes into that forearm press, sweep the leg in front of the pole and nice and low. Just thread that top elbow through, remember to squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Bottom hand's going to go into split grip, index finger down the pole, give it a push, start to slide down the pole, keep squeezing the elbow, extend the leg, and just hook it onto the front there. Outside hand's going to come up, thumb is down, pull and open that elbow back as much as you can. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze through the elbow. To release, give it a push, release here, and come down. Bottom hand, as we said, is in split grip and needs to give you a push. Very important, because your bottom leg, when it sweeps in front of the pole, will slide down the pole. And we need to do this because we need to start to bring our hips down to create the space in order for our top leg to extend. So thread here, push, slide your bottom leg down the pole, and now you'll start to push your hips back and slide them down too in order for your top leg to extend. Because ideally in this split, we want to let the heel, kind of the back of the heel, catch onto the pole rather than the pole being at the back of your knee or calf. So in order to get that extension, we have to actually push back and drop down the pole for that to happen. So it's all controlled with this hand while you're holding yourself firmly with this grip. So staying here, controlling with that hand. The push, now we're going to slide the bottom foot down the pole, push the hips back and let your hips slide down so you can extend that top leg and catch it onto the heel. And as we mentioned, it's going to depend on your flexibility and mobility of your groin and hips as to how much you need to push away from the pole. So the less mobility you have, the more you're going to have to push back through the hips so that you can straighten your top leg. If you're super flexible, you'll be closer to the pole. So to push further back, you'll be more like this, or slide down and be more like this. So either way, we still need to slide that bottom foot down to create the space to drop the hips and extend the leg, but it's all going to depend on mobility and flexibility. That's probably the most important part of your unicorn split, is that little hip drop and slide down to get into it. So we're going to do that again with that in mind, and we're just going to add our touches of finesse as well. And then, like I always say, don't worry too much about finesse until you feel really confident in the move first. And sometimes that can take weeks or even months if there's a brand new move, or you're conditioning new grip points, or your split is a little bit painful still. You certainly don't want to be pushing through those points of pain. So just take your time with it, and then when you feel really confident with it, then you can start to think about the finesse of the move. So with this one, the first one is the dead giveaway with the lack of finesse in this move, is this fist. Because we thread through and we have to rely so much on this elbow grip that often this fist stays as a fist. Now, when you're first learning it, I definitely encourage you to actually make a fist, because it really helps to squeeze the bicep when you make a fist. But after you've done the move to the point where you know that you can rely on that engagement and that elbow, then definitely open the hand and soften the fingers, because this looks a lot more polished and finessed than this. So like I said, they'll only go to there when you feel really confident with your grip. So that's the first part of finesse. The second thing that we want to think about is our arm. So that outside arm is going to open out, and like I mentioned earlier, if you can't reach your elbow, your ankle, that doesn't matter. You can hold your arm out. But for your full split, what we're going to do is extend the arm out and then lift it up and over. And that is just a really lovely, graceful way to get into this move, as opposed to just lifting your hand and grabbing your foot. So once you've dropped down and you're squeezing and you're pulling your chest in towards the pole, we're going to float our arm and think about making a rainbow over your head, up and over to your ankle. Just makes that whole movement really graceful, and just be soft and take your time in that port de bras or arm movement there. Also with our gaze direction, when we do this, I really like to actually turn and look at the pole. It just keeps a really nice line through your neck and through your jaw to do that. Just kind of enhances that, that line there and that shape over your head. Of course, you do not have to do that. Play with your gaze direction to see which one you like. For today, we're just going to turn and look towards the pole. And then, of course, in terms of finesse, it goes without saying, keep those toes pointed the whole time. I find that probably the part where we forget about pointing our toes is actually in that bottom leg. When you sweep it around to the front of the pole, what I see often here with the girls at the studio is there's a point, and then when we sweep it around, we relax the foot and then point when we get there. So try to keep your toes pointed the whole time, again, just for that polished, finessed look. So one thing that really helps to do that is when you're bringing your leg to the front of the pole, think about pointing it down towards the floor and then placing it in front of the pole, rather than just hooking your leg forward. Yeah, you want to think about pointing down and bringing it to the pole. So it kind of goes down and around rather than forward and around. And that does really help to keep the line of your ankle and toes really nice as well. All right, so that's a lot to think about. So let's try and put it all together. This time I'm going to go from a Cupid just to show you the drop down to get into the move. Of course, you can do the invert if you want to as well. So with your Cupid, we find that we don't have to use the forearm, because we're already lifted up, you can just hold the pole, true grip thumb up, and thread your elbow through from there. So let's give that a try, and we'll try to do the whole thing with those touches of finesse if you're ready to put them on. So I'm going to get lots of spin happening in this one, so we can keep spinning when we get into the actual split. We're going to go into a Cupid. Of course, if you're not ready to take your hand off, you don't have to for this. Grabbing, sliding your foot down the pole, and now just bring it in front of the pole, pointing the toes down. Hook and thread, squeezing. If you're ready to relax those fingers, go for it. Now here we go. Give it a push, slide the bottom foot down, slide the hips back, and try to sit down, sweeping the arm and looking in towards the pole. And then to come out, squeeze that elbow again, give yourself a bit of a push. And that's your unicorn split.